Madam Secretary, thanks for your service and for stepping up to be able to take on this. I would have to tell you that there's not a person on this dais that doesn't support education. We certainly believe that you support education. We have 50 million students that are involved in elementary and secondary education, 20 million people that are involved in higher education. That's 70 million Americans. That's an awful lot of families and people that are directly affected based on what's going on. And so we are all exceptionally passionate about this. I would also tell you, in my short time of being in the appropriations budget, it's a fairly rare moment, I would say, to sit in any hearing and to have a conversation about how we reduce federal spending. It seems to be every request that comes from every agency is we need additional funds, and there's always more to do. There's no question. But for someone to come and say what you just said about we have to be able to find a way to be able to serve students and serve the taxpayers as well is a fairly rare conversation around these parts. Let me just ask some clarification. You brought up earlier about this $1 billion increase in Title I funds dedicated to furthering options for children to unlock success. The question came out in the allusion to it earlier. Excuse me. How is this different than Race to the Top? And there was a concern from this dais that when President Obama was putting in place Race to the Top, it was really a requirement from the federal government. If you want these dollars, then you have to do our curriculum, do it our way, and if you don't do it our way, you can't get the dollars that came out of your state to come back to your state. How is this different than Race to the Top?
So the proposal is very much voluntary on this part of states, and it is only if states want to, and local education agencies and authorities want to attempt an experiment, really, to allow students to attend other public schools in their region. And it is no way going to be mandated from the top that this has to happen or how it has to happen. Other than that, in order to do so, there has to be money to follow the child to the other school. And so that is really the framework around which states or local districts would be able to opt into or adopt that part of that.
Does it give instructions to those states or those entities on how to do curriculum, how to do teacher evaluation?
Not at all.
How to be able to do testing requirements, additional reporting that's beyond the ESSA requirements that were already put down by Congress?
No, we've seen that movie. We're not going to do that one again.
Yeah, we all have. And so, okay, grateful for that. There's a concern as well when I talk to people in colleges about the Parent Plus loan program. And this is one of the things that we're going to have to address at this dais in law as well. But we'd want to be able to have the administration's assistance as we walk through this. Many colleges talk about the growing size of student loans on those families, and those are students that are taking it out. The colleges are made aware of the student loans, and there are caps for those student loans and criteria for those student loans. But when you get to their parents in the Parent Plus loan, that's not true. And many parents in their 50s are acquiring $50,000 and $60,000 worth of student loans in addition to what their students have that will be garnished from their Social Security checks in the days ahead based on the requirements of it. The colleges tell me over and over again they are not aware of that. They're able to work with students to limit their amount of student loans and to be able to counsel them, but they're not made aware of the Parent Plus loans, and they continue to accelerate. It's becoming a bigger and bigger issue. Have you had any other input on that or any background on that?
I'm aware of that issue and that, and really it really plays into the much larger question about how students are prepared and informed for their higher ed options and alternatives. And I think that as the higher ed bill or higher ed legislation is discussed, this is an area of concern that should be a part of that.
Okay, we'd love to have your cooperation on that because we have to be able to resolve that.
Indeed.
Quick story. I had a superintendent at a predominantly African American school district in this particular area of my state who came and caught me a couple of years ago and said, "We have got to have your help. The Office of Civil Rights is out of control." I had heard that from higher education. I had heard that from secondary schools. I'm hearing that from yet another superintendent, yet another principal. And the comments coming back to me were, we want to be able to honor every student, but we're being given instructions from D.C. on how to be able to manage things. Now, the president specifically gave instructions to be able to review regulations I would assume that this is going to be all regulations in all areas, but I would tell you in particular in higher education, our universities work exceptionally hard to be able to make sure every student from every background is honored in the process. But they tell me over and over, when someone comes out to do a Title IX piece, they've been given instructions from DC to find something. Stay there until you find something to be able to put in this report, and then require that university to be able to write a letter. What I would like to work with you on in the days ahead is let's help them succeed, not actually put someone out there that's going to stay there until they find something to be able to put into a report. But let's walk alongside, and where there's a problem, let's correct it, but let's not humiliate schools in the process. And I'd love to be able to continue to work with your office on ways that that's coming out.
I will welcome that opportunity,
Thank
Senator.
you.
Thank you, Senator Lankford.
Thank you. Do appreciate the long day and the long conversation on these issues. It is interesting to me that in the beginning of the Obama administration, they came to this committee and requested funds for Race to the Top funds for additional dollars for someone in D.C. to be able to say there are additional dollars if you'll do our curriculum that we pick, if you'll do it our way, if you'll go through our plans, if you'll have a system that we approve, we'll give you additional dollars. If I'm tracking this correctly, you're coming to this committee and saying, we would like additional dollars to get to schools if they pick a plan and they run a plan, and if they provide choice to their students in a public school setting. Am I tracking that correctly?
You are tracking that correctly.
I grew up in an innovative district that did school choice from school to school. I did not go to the high school closest to me. I literally drove all the way across town. They had a band program that I liked, and all those different things. As a middle school student, talked with my mom, and I ended up in a school way across town because my district allowed that. I had a great educational experience, but my parents in a public school setting had a choice within the district of 4 high schools that I could choose from, and I was allowed to do that. I was the beneficiary of that. Yeah. By the way, I met my wife at that school as well, and so I'm forever grateful for a district that just allowed parents to be able to choose what school that they went to within a public school setting. That doesn't seem like a revolution to me. That's something that I did in high school a very long time ago that I understand some districts don't want to do and some states don't want to do, and that's their choice. But what you're saying is, if you choose to do that, we'll help you in that transition and allow parents to be able to have that choice. Am I correct on that?
That's correct.
Senator Merkley brought up the issue about religious liberty on campus and asked you some questions about, protecting religious liberty on campus as well, which I think is a pertinent question to be able to deal with. This has been an interesting conversation that really seems a little shocking to me that's even a conversation in America at all, that we would have to discuss should religious liberty of students be protected. The Department of Education decided for the first time ever to be able to post all of the schools, the higher ed schools, that have asked for a Title IX religious exemption, to put them in a special place on a website and to be able to basically put them out. It appeared to be for shame purposes, to say these are all the schools that ask for religious exemptions. And it was a new method, I think, to be able to basically try to humiliate schools to not ask for a religious exemption. Is that something that you're going to continue? Will there be a public display of every school? Because it never has been in the past. Since it was actually put in place in 1972, there's never been a public release of that unless someone did a FOIA request. And then obviously you can get that through a FOIA request. Will there continue to be a public display of religious institutions in some special setting?
It doesn't sound like it's a necessary thing, and it's something that I will certainly look into.
Well, I think it's something that should be looked into, just to be able to ask the question. If any institution asks for a religious exemption, that is something the law allows them to do.
That's correct.
And there shouldn't be any way to be able to try to publicly humiliate folks because they are following the law and following through on that. We have the same thing. We have some states right now that are experimenting on college campuses to say if they're an extracurricular group that's honored on campus, just like most other campuses, fraternities, whatever it may be that have campus access, if the leadership of the organization, not the membership, if the leadership of the organization can't be individuals that actually violate the religious principles of a religious faith-based group, whether it be Christian, Muslim, Jewish, whatever it may be, if the leadership of that group is not open to people that are non-practitioners of that faith, then they can't come on campus and they can't have access. It's literally defining for that group what the leadership of the group, of a religious-based group, has to be. I have an issue with that. It's one thing to say your membership should be open to everyone. It's another thing to say the leadership of your group. Do you have an initial impression on that?
Well, I think this is an issue that bears a lot more discussion, and one that has, I think, come to the fore in recent years in a way that we've not seen before. Religious liberty is a very key and important issue to be discussed in the context of all educational settings.
Right. This was an issue that President Clinton put out a great piece decades ago, just honoring the religious protections of every individual on every campus. This appeared to have been a settled issue, and then suddenly it's rising up again, whether it's on a secondary campus or on a institution of higher education. What is and is not permissible for a faith-based student. I just personally believe that every individual should be able to live whatever faith they choose to live, or to live no faith at all, and that that be acceptable on a campus setting, and to not try to require them to be able to practice one thing, or to say you can, in writing, have one thing, but not in practice have another. That's not consistent with our values. So I appreciate your testimony today.
Thank you, Senator Lankford.